where we're at here in Orange County in context with the larger state effort with California Jobs First. You all are beginning or in the process of completing a deliverable that's being requested by the state of California for all 13 of the regions that are doing this work um, across the state. So one of the in between the last time we met and today, in between these meetings, the state introduced a new deliverable to each region, and what they're asking each of the 13 regions to produce are what they're calling priority sector activation plans. And you have a copy of the template for what those activation plans will look like in your agenda packet. So please reference that if you want to familiarize yourself with what this group will be working on in the next several weeks and into the new year with regards to this new deliverable. But I wanted to just spend a couple minutes providing some high-level talking points on what that means and how it relates to the sectors that were submitted by this group to the state in its regional plan part two. And thank you, Maria. Maria just dropped that file for you all to take a look at, which contains the public comments and the template that I'm referring to in this part of the agenda. So in this slide here, you see on the left-hand side of this, what's in front of you, there is a column that says region identified sector priorities. And then it's broken down in two categories. You have tradable, and then you have non-tradable. These are the sector priorities that you all collectively submitted to the state of California as part of your regional plan part two. Um, what the state has done in that time and they've done this for every region, has reviewed and analyzed and synthesized those priorities and has um, translated them into a categorization process that they have created, which is on the right, uh, to the right of that column, and you'll see that little blue arrow that's alluding to that categorization. The columns it reads potential jobs first sector, and it's got them listed as five sectors. So manufacturing, precision manufacturing, high-tech semiconductors, life sciences, med tech, and then underneath that you see education and knowledge creation, tourism and outdoor recreation. And the those are the categories or the labels that the state will be using for these sectors in other parts of the state who have identified similar priorities, but also including the work here in Orange County. And those are what they consider the tradable sectors. Underneath that, you have new categorization for what they consider to be non-tradable sectors. And you'll see that what this region submitted on the left has been categorized with uh, the, the, the labels there on the right. So healthcare, housing, and infrastructure. And so the activation plans, this new deliverable that's been introduced, is only required for the tradable sectors by the state of California. They're not requiring that activation plans be created for the other three enabling sectors. And so this group's task with the support from OCBC will be to generate those activation plans for those five tradable sectors. And the plan is to start with the tourism and outdoor sector, and that will be due at the end of next month, the 31st of January, with the remaining four due before the end of the fiscal year in June. So a little bit of time, but there will be some, detailed work that needs to be considered when generating these activation plans and certainly, opportunities for you all to contribute into what is produced. So as noted on this slide, those draft documents will be presented to this collaborative before they're submitted, and you'll have ample opportunity to be able to contribute to what gets generated and ultimately submitted to the state for those 5 tradable sectors.
So I don't mean to cut off. So I think, sorry, but because we had a call with the state just late last week.
Oh,
So
go ahead, Jesse.
they updated it to where it doesn't have to be strictly tradable. So sorry, let's clear that. So sorry, Ish, there was just an update recently. They did just say approximately no more than 5 is what they're looking at, but it could be one of the non-tradable
Oh,
ones
good.
if that's something that, of course, the region really wants to focus on. However, the tourism and outdoor, the first one on January 31st has to be a tradable, of which this group already decided they'd like to proceed with tourism and outdoor first before they kind of proceeded with the others. So I just wanted to
Excellent.
clear that. My apologies that there was just a late update from when we last spoke, but I know there are 2 questions if you want to take those now before we move on.
Yeah, no, thank you for that very important detail because that is, I think, a consideration that has been contemplated in other regions. So I'm glad you shared that with the group. So it's not limited to the 5 tradable. You do have the discretion to decide if you, as Jesse said, to include one of those activation plans to reflect a non-tradable sector. And let me go to the questions in the chat. So I see a question from um, Felicia. How do we, oh, no, that has to do with the agenda. And also Anna. So I think you all should have copies of that agenda.
Ish, I've had my hand up for a while.
Oh, go ahead, Linda. I'm not.
Yeah, that's all right. Do you mind?
No, right in. I couldn't see your hand. Go
That's
ahead.
all right. I will tell you, um I feel like I have completely lost all connection with working reality on this anymore. I mean, I can only imagine what it must be like for Jesse and Maria. But this is feeling more and more like a bait and switch. Um, we just that the plan gets laid down. We're all working toward it. And then I mean, and then the rules change, the goalpost gets moved. I know that people really like this kind. I mean, people like my friend Tony here, Tony swims in this, sort of grant language all the time, but the rest of us on the phone are involved in grant writing to lesser degree. And so activation plans and, I mean, there's all this language and verbiage that's being used and dates and things that we had to comply with. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but I mean, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing anymore. And then, the thing about, well, we can't invest in, the HRTC members anymore, except, we get, a stipend if we show up, and some will show up and some won't show up. And I mean, could somebody please just
Yeah.
take a bit of a step back and give us, Jesse's smiling. Help me, Jesse. Help me. You
Yeah, I
got
don't
it.
know.
Jesse, do
I
you
Hold
want
think
to
me.
offer a diplomatic response to or comment to that?
no. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. Those are all fair statements. Well, obviously on the stipend end, we were gonna. I don't want to go too far into this because we do have our agenda, but we all sent you the direct. I mean, that's from the state, so I guess there's nothing we can do there. So just let's just state the facts there. No, the state has changed a lot. They've changed this program a lot. They've changed themselves internally a lot, and we just have to be flexible if we're committed to this stuff. So no, I totally understand, Linda. There's a lot of changes here. I hate to say, I don't want to be the one saying like it seems like the state has figured out what they want to do with this because they've changed it 3 or 4 times already. So I'm not learning maybe from past lessons, but I do think that they're now pretty confident in what they want to do with this. I don't expect too many drastic changes from really trying to grow industry clusters in the state throughout the regions, whichever they may be. The state has picked their priority ones. It doesn't mean that Orange County can't focus on the ones we've already selected as priorities, but I think that the state has, over these past 2 years or so, narrowed in on what they want to try to accomplish. And that is growing industry cluster sectors that are climate forward and as focused on disinvested communities as much as they possibly can.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, but that's totally fair. You're right. That's how Maria and I and the team feel. This wasn't what we started with, but we are going to try to get done what we can get done, given that these are the new rules being applied.
All right. And again, I know we have an agenda, but the definition of an activation plan is,
An activation plan is us truly, say, putting pen to paper and saying, here are the things that we need to accomplish in order to grow these industry clusters in a more equitable way. It's a project management tool. So we're going to say, so Octane, right, we're doing MedTech, and Octane can be a partner to do X, Y, Z. We come back 18 months later, hey, Octane, did we do X, Y, Z? So it's a far more of an accountability tool for us. It clearly defines more than a strategy of, we want to grow MedTech, we want to grow hospitality and tourism, we want to uplift disinvested communities through apprenticeships, right? Who's doing the apprenticeships? How can that be delivered? How much will that cost? That's what we're trying to get to now.
Yeah, and I would just add that take a look at that template in the agenda packet so you get a little bit sense of what that is going to look like tactfully to put it together, operationalize what Jesse just described. Tony, I'm going to go to your hand next, but before I do, I just want to share that I think for the other sectors that activation plans are not submitted for, or there isn't sources of funding from the state for, you still have your regional plan part 2 as a tool to help fundraise and from other sources, whether it be federal, philanthropic, local government, as just some examples, to be able to provide the capital that's needed to be able to adequately resource. For example, one of the enabling sector priorities that this collective has identified. So I'll to say don't consider the egg your only basket where you can put your eggs in. There's other ways to use what you created collectively to be able to resource what you all have surfaced as priorities in this process. So with that, Tony, let me turn to you. And
Ish, before you turn to Tony, can I say something real quick? Linda, if you want to work together, I'm happy to sit down with you and we can learn all this together at the same time. I've had to do a lot of research and one-on-ones with the state because of this. I actually just talked to Jesse yesterday about, yes, it's really frustrating and I get really protective of the collaborative and all the work you all have put in and everything you guys have to read through and learn. So I try as much as I can in my recap emails and the emails that I send out before collaborative meetings to condense the information, but it is a lot. And how it's feeling is when I was in grad school, an assignment wouldn't be on the syllabus, and then out of nowhere, the professor would add a assignment last minute. That's how it's feeling right now. But I promise we're gonna get through it.
Maria, I trust you completely. And yes, I will do a follow-up phone call with you and you could you can school me on some of these things, because obviously Octane with these decisions, Octane is, has a great role to play here. And I want to make sure I'm giving my leadership really informed information.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. And I will just add that for our part of California Forward, we're trying to help all the 13 regions around the state by putting investor exchanges together where there can be some matchmaking done between folks like you all, the sector priorities and projects you're identifying, and doing some matchmaking with a cross-sector array of prospective investors that might be interested in supplementing whatever you get from the state to implement your priorities. Jesse, I'm going to invite you to look at the questions from Jasmine in the chat while we give Tony a chance to chime in.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to answer the chat right away. Please, everyone else verbally.
Yeah, Linda, I actually share your frustration, and that I think that these activation plans there's nothing wrong with them, but they're going to be time suckers. When we came to an agreement on our regional plan, the regional plan has strategies in it. And as I'm looking at what the activation plans is, I think one of the key features for me is that they may or may not include recommendations that are in the regional plan relative to how we would implement strategies. Their definition of tactic is slightly different. So we might have had steps or stuff in the regional plan. The other thing about the activation plan is that they are what this collective may facilitate, not necessarily do, but facilitate, which means there will be over in 16 to 18 months, and there will be other activities for which this is not going to be helping to implement. And for groups that are interested in particular areas, that means they may or may not fit within the activation plan. It doesn't mean on their own they can't do it, and that means even Octane, but you're now going to have multiple places where somehow you're supposed to track. So these are new rules, and I'm not sure. It's always good to have a plan on how to activate, but this is an incomplete activation of the plan. That's my interpretation of it.
Great, thank you, Tony. And I think for the sake of time, because we're a couple minutes over, we're gonna make that the final comment on this item. If you have more thoughts and concerns about this direction we're going in to the coming year with these activation plans, please reach out, as Maria has offered, to her and schedule some time to review what we're going over here today and see how we can help you, to Tony's point, make sure you're tracking in the right places. But with that, let's go to agenda item number 3, which is a regional investment initiative, the survey that was conducted for the Catalyst phase. So last meeting, staff issued this non-binding survey to get a sense of the types of projects that you all thought could be eligible for funding under this work, with a focus that those prospective projects needed some pre-development support and as a key priority for Catalyst eligibility. And I want to give Maria a chance to go over the findings of the survey and the analysis that she's done to share a little bit about the over 50 projects that were submitted as consideration under this exercise that was done. So Maria, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. So also I just posted the activation plan example, everyone, in the chat so that you don't have to scroll through the entire agenda packet right now. And then you just go straight to the activation plan. So I'm going to share screen. Give me 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, Maria.
Yeah, of course. I won't be able to see the chat, everyone, so I apologize for that.
No worries. Jesse and I will keep an eye on it. And
okay, awesome. Let me make this window smaller. Okay, you all see.
we can see your screen. Yes, we see file folders at the moment.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm showing you all that just so that you can see where I uploaded the Catalyst project surveys, which I shared with all of you. We received 56 of them, which was really good turnout. So if you all click on that folder and you have time to review, you can review all of the surveys. Just to remind you all, they were not an official application. We kind of just wanted to gauge and see what folks were looking for. And then you also can find the attachments. So for some of the surveys, people did upload an additional Word document attachment. And so you'll find those in here. I sent that all to you in the email on Tuesday evening. So this is the survey. So one of the questions that we asked was, where in Orange County will this project provide benefits? This is also in the agenda packet. I sent you all screenshots of this with the percentages right next to it. So the top one came back at county-wide. So that's where in Orange County project would provide benefits. The next one was City of Santa Ana. So I lined them up all from largest to smallest percentage. Up next came up City of Anaheim at 25%, Garden Grove, Westminster, City of Orange, etc. Again, this is all in your agenda packet in the PowerPoint presentation. The next question was, if applicable, where in Orange County will this project be located? The highest number came back at City of Santa Ana, 41.7%. Then countywide at 39.29, City of Anaheim, City of Garden Grove, Costa Mesa, Buena Park, etc. The first 10 cities are also in your agenda packet. And then the next question was, which option below best defines your project? So this was original language that the state had used, and we want to be consistent with the state. So the highest number came back at workforce development, projects that support workforce training and or supportive services in sustainable career. That came back at 73.21%, also in your agenda packet. The next one up was social infrastructure, projects that remove barriers for communities to access opportunities such as equity. That came back at 42.86%. And then innovation, ecosystem, infrastructure, and community facility development. Then entrepreneurship and access to capital projects. So projects that support firms and entrepreneurs with the capital and technical. So that came back at lowest number at 23.21%. The next one is, which industry or industries, if any, would your project contribute to? So these are the 10 target sectors that were also included in the regional plan part 2, which also align with state strategy. So these are all the industries that you all, or 10 target sectors that you all had approved. So the highest one came back at education services, 48.21%. And then social assistance at 42.86%. Then other, hospitals, construction of buildings, ambulatory healthcare services, miscellaneous manufacturing, specialty trade contractors, computer and electronic product manufacturing, food services and drinking places, accommodation, and then nobody selected, not applicable. And then the next one was, which components, if any, does your project include? So these are the top line strategies within the regional plan part 2. So just to remind you all, the 10 target sectors are, what do we want to do? And then the top line strategies are, how do we want to get there? How are we going to address it? So the top one was career pathways, percentage at 83.93%. The second one was uplift community voices through respectful cultural engagement, improve community participation. That was at 62.5%. Third one up was enhanced quality of life, and then apprenticeships, climate resilient environment, small business worker ownership and entrepreneurship, green and emerging technology and innovation. And then the last one was housing at 17.86%. And then we also had provided language for will your project, for example, be in a Justice 40 disadvantaged census tract? We had also linked the map, and that came back at 73.21%. The next high number up was ensure equitable access to quality jobs for residents of disinvested communities. That came back at 66.7%. And then promote the creation of family-sustaining jobs with healthcare and retirement benefits, career advancement. And again, this is all in your agenda packet. And we also wanted to ask, is the primary applicant a member of the Jobs First Collaborative? That was per your request. So yes, the number was 42.86%. No, 39.29%. And then the third option was 17.86%, and that one was no, but they might be a project partner. And then we asked if they might need any specific technical assistance. Some people said not at this time, not applicable. Somebody said we would like to work with a coffee shop and our business consultant to help us develop the groundwork for our training program. That's just one example. We would greatly appreciate help with sharing our surveys widely. Another example, let's see, this project needs to retain the services of a firm that can assist with creating a geofence. For Little Saigons, a consultant that assists with establishing community benefit districts. And then for pre-development funding, Jesse, I'm so sorry. I know you had emailed me the total. I think it was like 31 million.
Yeah, so I would say like if you read through all of them, which you have access to, at least the executive summaries, I would say like not all of them were pre-development specifically. We didn't necessarily want to sort projects because this is like a non-binding survey. The number is over $30 million, right? We only have 9 million in Catalyst. The point is like, yes, it's most likely going to be oversubscribed, but I do want to clear like that $30 million probably a little bit high because I think some people had implementation projects that would have added a few million. But even including those, far over the $9 million we have currently, which is what we expected, but I kind of confirmed that there'd be a lot of demand for these dollars.
And this is a generally easy survey to fill out. So it could be too that, you know, in the future when we release the SFP, some people might drop off and they might not want to fill it out. But then we also might have other organizations or people that may not have filled out the survey that will request funds and will propose projects. So that's the last of it. Just as a reminder, you all have access to all of it in this folder that I shared. If you need me to resend it to you, I'm happy to. Just email me, let me know to send it to the top of your inbox. And with that, I pass it on back to Jesse. And Jesse, you'll go over the next. Oh, sorry, Linda, you have questions?
Yeah,
if there are
no,
questions, yes, presentation.
yeah, this is interesting in retrospect because what's coming up highest is not in the state's recommended focus areas. Am I interpreting that incorrectly? But I mean, I just,
Yeah, we can say that there's a little bit more flexibility, I think, in your Catalyst funding to deploy it in the way that's aligned with what you've developed with both your tradable and your non-tradable. And Jesse, feel free to chime in and add more color on that, but I'll just offer that as a high level talking point.
Yeah, that's right. You know, I think again, as we move forward, we're going to have to decide on how much we're going to go with the direction the state is heading versus ensuring that still regional priorities get met. What that mix is, what that blend is, it's going to probably it will be the collaborative decision, but that's something we have to acknowledge as well. But I mean, Linda, is there something more specific you mean as to cutting against kind of what we just heard?
yeah, no, I mean, I just, again, when I saw, for example, there was a, when I was going through the packet, there were a lot of projects that what it seemed to translate to was that projects that were in other areas than what the state has just declared that they want to focus on. And so it seemed that more than not is my point. And so that's why I was thinking of the 56 projects, Maria and Jesse, what percentage of them now reflect the goals of California, as opposed to what we've been working on and what we emerged with. Do we have any idea?
No, but I think that's simple analysis we can do in the recap. But again, as Ish said, there is discretion to still very much cover those bases. I don't.
Okay.
There's no sense that Catalyst dollars are not for us to abandon some of those things, but I think we do have to recognize the direction state's going and whether that's helpful. Especially if you think about multiplying dollars, right?
Mhm.
If it has other grants that they want to deploy that align with this, then that's where we might have to dance to the beat of their drum a bit. But it doesn't mean we have to abandon our priorities that were already set with the 9 million that we have.
Right.
Thank you.
Yosefa, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Maria, you may have mentioned this at the top, but I'm trying to understand how this data will be harnessed or leveraged. It sounds like there's going to be an RFP process, and so just wondering from here to there, what are the implications of these results? I doubt it's, you know, based on these results, that's how we're going to frame the evaluation matrix, but maybe that is the case. So I'm just curious how we plan to use this data for the purposes of the Catalyst RFP.
Yeah, and this was also to gauge, right, to get an idea of what folks in Orange County were interested in when proposing for funding. But I do remember, I think it was like the August meeting. I think Luis, somebody had mentioned, you know, we should create a survey. We should release it and just get an idea and a sense of what people are interested in. So that's what we did. However, this went out before all these changes with the state. So we kind of just have to pivot a little bit based on, you know, whatever updates the state has provided. Also, this wasn't a call for a proposal, so it's not official. It's not an application yet. And then in the next portion of the agenda, that's where Jesse will gather feedback on NOFO and what you all are interested in. And I don't know, Jesse, if there's anything you'd like to add before we move to Tony.
No, I mean, other than if Josefa, Maria, if you could stop share screen, that was actually the question we were going to pose to all of you before staff gets to drafting for you to review something. So happy to take Tony's, and then I have a slide asking kind of fundamental questions on how we want to structure some of it that I can get to after Tony's question.
And then just want to flag that there's, or Maria, maybe this one's for you, a request from Dan. If you can share the survey with him, Dan from SBDN.
Yeah, so this is all the data and the screenshots are in the agenda packet that I just posted in the chat earlier. I'm happy to post it again. The survey did already close a few weeks ago, so the survey that I'm sharing is the data that we collected. I do also see other messages in the chat that are directed to me. So they're not showing publicly to everybody else. But one of the comments is setting up meetings with me and other folks just to kind of walk them through things one-on-one, which I'm happy to do. You all have my email, you have my cell phone number, and definitely don't be afraid to speak up because your voice is so important in this collaborative, and you're uplifting not just your own voice, but the voice of your community as well. So this is where you want to take that opportunity to speak up and ask questions, especially for those folks who are not in the collaborative and feel like they don't have those opportunities.
So when I was looking at the survey questions, one of the things that I thought it helped identify are areas that we probably need to be sure that we're being very specific on technical assistance, like ways that we can standardize in a good way outreach to disinvested communities. Like we know what some of the best practices are, and maybe even doing like little fact sheets to help future applicants be sure that they're considering all, you know, if they're going to do workforce training, if you take them in categories, if you're doing like a workforce training or a service, that you ensure that you're doing non-traditional hours. So that looking at these can give us some of those types of hints. The other piece that the other area that I thought we were very low in is some of the kind of the transition to a clean economy. And so in that case, one of the things that I was just thinking, like encouraging people that when you're locating a program, a service, a facility, what's the access to public transit? Are there opportunities for biking? So there's kind of these wraparound pieces that we can see in the survey that don't score very well, but you could actually include within an application without, you know, throwing it off. So that's one of the things that was really helpful for me to see it, was where we might be telling our sector investment coordinators to be really focusing on technical assistance.
Got it.
Thank you, Tony. Jesse,
Sorry.
did you want to share your slide and walk us through?
Yeah, well, again, I think people, if we can move quickly, I know Apollonio would like to make a comment. So Marino, on your end, if he can come off because he's in the translation channel, you know, technically how that works, or they don't.
Let me look for his name here real quick.
So, Luis, did you have one more? Or I think, yeah, Luis, do you have a question? Is it based on this, or one final thought? Or was it just to notify us of the comment?
I don't think he's in the translation channel. I think that Adriana has him on the cell phone.
Okay.
I will ask him to unmute. Where
Yes.
did you see that? Is that in the chat that he wanted to come off mute?
Yeah, Adriana put it in
Adriana's
chat.
flagging that Apolonio would like to make a comment. Apolonio, bienvenido. Si gusta prender el micrófono de su teléfono, quitar al silenciador y proceder con sus comentarios, lo invitamos que lo haga. ¿Sí nos escucha?
And then also, everything that we reviewed today, just so everybody knows, I've reviewed with Apolonio. So I translate all documents for him a few days prior to the meeting, and I sit down with him and some of our Spanish-speaking residents. They're non-English speaking, so I make sure I sit down with them and go over all the documents, answer all the questions too. So that's probably why too he wants to make a comment.
Okay, then until then, yes, Luis, you have to become a panelist. Well, let me promote you then. So just again, we have 10 minutes. Luis, if you can kind of maybe chime in with this, but this is where, again, given some of the data, what are people's thoughts on how we could potentially structure that NOFO, Josefa, kind of what's the bridge here? It's kind of these set of questions. And we're going to send out a survey to get everyone, but I think this is your chance to maybe lend your thoughts, right? Surveys are not good at discussion or conversation. So we want to give you the opportunity to kind of maybe convince others on how to think about this. You know, again, do we just focus on a few projects and move those along the talent pipeline? Do we open it up a bit, or do we kind of aid a bunch of projects in a little way, some hybrid of both? Should we do this in multiple rounds? We have 9 million. So should it be 3 million, wait a few months, get a new set of projects, another 3 million, then a final 3 million, something to that effect? If you look, do we put ceilings and floors? The more that we put conditions into the original NOFO so people know, the probably easier it is for there to be a selection process. Because again, there's 60 or 70 of you. If there were 50 to 100 projects, that'd be, you know, quite an elaborate way to kind of make decisions on which one should get funded. You know, so do we try to make sure that there's economic distribution? Do we try to make sure that all priority sectors from this group are met? Or is it just, hey, let the strongest projects win out? Again, that would be then a lot of vetting from all of you to read through all the projects and make those selections, but that could be the prerogative of this group. Or are there other conditions or parameters that you'd like to see set up when the NOFO is released that allows us, again, to sort and triage and to make decisions? So that is where I open it up to all of you, comments, put it in the chat. We'll send a survey so we can get, you know, everyone's input on this, but again, more about why you think things should be a certain way in order to kind of convince some of your colleagues on how they should think about it. And we'll have about 10 minutes of this, and then we'll have to move on to the final agenda item.
Any comments and questions? Linda, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
I do. And just as with any strategic undertaking, what objectives and outcomes are we expecting? Because that takes, in my mind, that takes precedent. In other words, we want every dollar to work the hardest for us to get the greatest output and community impact. So I really would like to see that taken into consideration. And I admit to my friends and colleagues on this call, that does mean that there will be smaller projects because perhaps the impact will be 5 as opposed to 50 jobs that are created or industry sectors that are expanded or grown or strengthened. There is that bias, and so that's what it's really a conundrum for us because we worked together for so long. But we are at a big fork in the road right now. Do we want the greatest possible long-term sustainable income in our disinvested communities, or are we looking for pocket impact? Those are tough decisions that lay before us, but I just had to raise that. I do think we ought to consider impact.
Thank you, Linda. And I see Melanie, you have your hand up. Let's go to you.
Thanks. So having done a lot of grant applications in my lifetime, I have some thoughts. I'm not a big fan of a floor in a grant application because what a small nonprofit like mine can do with $100,000 could mean nothing to somebody else. And so I would support a ceiling, but not a floor. I do think we need to prioritize the applications to ensure that they're hitting the 3 priorities. I also think there should be, for lack of a better word, bonus points for matching funds or in-kind opportunities. I also support geographic distribution, and if we can quantify the benefits to the disinvested communities. So I kind of come across all sorts of topics that could fit into that one, whether it's pollution burden or language or income level, kind of all the different ways that we can look at a disinvested community. And then I also think there might be a benefit to figuring out a strategy for, we plan on funding 5 to 7 projects in this range and 9 to 15 projects in this range, so that it helps us narrow down not only projects and priorities, but that there are some bigger projects and some smaller projects. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Melanie. And I do see a comment from Josefa in the chat as well. Josefa, do you want to come off and elaborate in a few words with your suggestion here on the opportunity to refine a process with multiple rounds as opposed to just one?
Yeah, just per Jesse's comments earlier about 1 round or multiple rounds, just thinking out loud about how, because things seem to be so dynamic, it could be helpful to have a round, learn through it so that we can improve our execution implementation in subsequent rounds. But that's at the risk of either losing funding or not resourcing projects that are more time sensitive. So recognizing all the sides of this, just a thought.
Thank you, Josefa. Okay, well, we are, well, let's do one last question, and then Luis, you'll have the final.
We have 5 minutes ish. So
5
anyone
minutes?
within
Okay.
5 minutes, drop it in the chat, raise your hand. Yes.
And I saw your hand went up too, so I'll acknowledge that. But let's start with Luis, and then we'll go to you, Anna.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just yeah, I guess I want to go back to this question that Jesse mentioned earlier, you know, between balancing the priorities of our region and the, you know, the requirements, the kind of new requirements and new processes that the state is bringing. And yeah, I just want to throw in my 2 cents to encourage us to really put in the time to figure out how to prioritize the regional needs and the, you know, I also what Melanie was mentioning, I support that as well, like figuring out ways to prioritize. Linda was also saying this, right? Like prioritize the projects that will have the greatest impact. So yeah, I just want to throw that in. I think what brought a lot of us to the table was the initial language of this initiative, which was a lot about, you know, moving resources to disinvested communities and kind of recognizing the need to shift some of these funding patterns. So I would encourage us, it will take some work to design processes that will, you know, within the NOFO, I think we'll have to name, you know, what's the selection process going to be. And I think if we can start figuring that out, that will be helpful.
Thank you, Luis. We'll go to Ana Ursua, and then we have Ana Charco also with her hand up. So Ana.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, it's taken me a minute to process everything, and but I also, similar to what Linda was saying, like it would be helpful to think about like where are we headed and what's the, you know, what are we hoping will come out of this. And so I support a lot of what Luis was saying just now too about, you know, how do we make sure to support the decisions we've been making as a collaborative, the needs that we've been seeing surface, the impact directly in disinvested communities. So a few things that I'll contribute that I think about is, I know there's another visual in the packet around enablers, right? Like housing, childcare, like what are the things that will and enable people to access opportunities, remove barriers. So I want to lift up that. I did hear, you know, even if it's not pre-development specific, how do we make sure that these are things that are making possible tangible improvements in people's lives? And yeah, so I would support making sure that there's dollars there. I'm still thinking through a few things like the I like what you just mentioned, Josefa, on the learning from multiple rounds, especially if we don't think that that money will get, you know, canceled, that if it's safe to do so. I think that can be great to learn from. And yeah, in general, just more chances to keep thinking together would be helpful.
Then again, we're going to send this in the form of a survey. I think people need more time to process. We just want, of course, again, it doesn't really, there's no dialogue in survey. So we want to make sure you have dialogue up with your colleagues, but of course people have time to think about these questions. It's a lot to think about in a short amount of time. So definitely you don't have to have all the answers at this very moment.
Thank you, Ana. Thank you, Jesse. Ana Charco, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Going off on those on the two comments, I think I really want to highlight the important work that a few organizations here in this collaborative had in hosting community forums and study groups in which they engage nearly 150 community members. And as we have seen, I looked through the agenda packet and saw the community members' comments. And I think I want to highlight the importance of those public comments and the need of the committee members have been largely overlooked in the regional plan report. And I think it is essential to ensure that those voices and experiences of disadvantaged communities are prioritized in regional and like our local plans for economic development. So I think we should continue moving forward, and the community participation should not only be limited to the research phase. Instead, it must be extended to all stages, from consultation, project selection, implementation. So I think moving forward, I think it will be very critical to ensure that these plans truly reflect and serve the communities that we're meant to support. But I think I would definitely want to highlight all the public comments that were mentioned or that were brought on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ana. And I think that was our last comment. We got to move to the last piece of our agenda here, which is inviting a friend and colleague who was formerly part of the state team with this initiative, is now has now moved on from that role and is supporting not just OCBC, but by extension all of you in trying to help identify funding sources at the federal level that can help with resourcing projects that will create some momentum on deploying equitable and environmentally sustainable priorities. And so we want to turn it over to Matt Phillips to give us an update on what he's been up to in supporting this cause. So Matt, if you can hear us, the floor is yours. Matt, I'm not hearing you and wondering if you're in the panelist mode.
He just put in the chat that he needs to be elevated to panelist.
I see it now. Thank you for that, Luis. So I think we're in the process of doing that. So bear with us. And I'll just comment as he comes on that, you know, having Matt understand the inside workings from the state's perspective of what goals have been with this project, I think is advantageous to this collective to now be in a position to support the identification of additional resources beyond state funding to implement what you all have surfaced as collective priorities. So Matt, if you could hear us, let's turn it over. All right, thank you, Jesse. Welcome, Matt. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Ish. It's good to see you all. Thanks so much for inviting me to join. I will share my screen and then I'll give like a pretty brief presentation about the federal funding grant opportunities that I've been researching that I think are well suited to California Jobs First. And if, if not specifically for this program, maybe some of you, especially some of the nonprofit and CBO partners at the collaborative, may be interested in some of these opportunities. So just to sort of reiterate, like why I'm looking at this, for the Catalyst program, there's these three main goals: support the regional collaboratives to allow for continued inclusive planning from the planning phase, building the region's portfolio or pipeline of ready-to-go projects, and then tying those projects to federal, state, and private investments. Jesse and the team have asked me to focus on federal and state investments for now, and so I'm going to talk about the current federal investments today. So most of what I've been looking at come from the Inflation Reduction Act. This is just a snapshot of a couple of the sort of bigger, a smattering of the grant opportunities that have been available. Primarily the ones that I think will be most interesting to this group are those that are available from the EPA. So there have been, the grants are broadly related to climate action and emissions reduction. The community change grants, the environmental justice block grants, and the greenhouse gas reduction fund are three of the grants that I'll point to, and especially I'll talk about the greenhouse gas reduction fund. But there are other smaller and larger agencies that have federal funding, and especially one I'll point out that's working with the state is the Digital Equity Competitive Grant Program. That one, the state of California is working with the federal government on. To pivot and look more specifically at the GGRF, or Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund grants, there are four main components to this program. One is called Solar for All. It's a grant program focused on residential affordability, getting solar installed across the country, and it also has some job training components. This one has already been awarded, and it's been awarded to two entities in California. One is the iBank, the investment bank, which is housed out of the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, and another nonprofit called Grid Alternatives, which is based in Los Angeles, but works statewide. The next one is the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, and this one is paired with the National Clean Investment one, the next one on the screen. These are primarily to finance clean energy and environmental justice in investments in communities. The Clean Communities Investment Accelerator one provides capital and technical assistance to small community lenders like CDFIs, community development finance institutions. This one has been awarded to nonprofits already and some of those lenders, and there will be funding coming available in 2025. The National Clean Investment Fund is a similar strategy. It's also been awarded to nonprofits, and some funding is available now. This one is primarily targeted at lenders, and so if you're a CDFI or any sort of community level or nonprofit lender, this would be a good grant to check out. The final one, and I think one of the most interesting ones for this group, is the Environmental Justice Thriving Communities Program. These are sub-grants offered to environmental justice projects. Eligibility for CBOs, nonprofits, other smaller community organizations. There's also, so the way this one is working is that the EPA granted this funding, it's billions of dollars in funding to a nonprofit in each of the EPA's regions across the country. And then each of those nonprofits will be releasing that funding in sub-grants over the next several years. So the fund has already been given out to, it's already been encumbered with one of these nonprofits. And we're waiting sort of to find out when those will be released. It seems likely sometime early in 2025. The EJ, the Environmental Justice Thriving Community subgrants for Region 9, which is the California region for EPA, has been awarded to social and environmental entrepreneurs. I linked this slide has all the links to their websites if you're interested. And there's also a link to the grantees for all of the other programs that I mentioned. And so I know we're about at time. I'll share these slides around, or I'll send them to Jesse and he can share them around. They have the links embedded in these in this slide, and I'm happy to answer questions. Jesse, I can also answer questions if folks have want to chat outside of this meeting.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, not seeing any questions in the chat, but I think I see someone's hand up. Felicia, is that right?
Yeah, so that's what happened because she's not on the club. We'll have to take that offline. So I'll stay on to answer that question.
Got it. Very good. We've got about a minute or so for any questions from the group or comments.
Yeah,
Otherwise-
one came to me directly for Matt. Are all of these solely for California?
Yeah, these ones, so no, they're not all solely for California, but I pulled out the ones that are based in California. The only one on here that's solely specific for California is this Region 9 Thriving Communities subgrants. It's a national program, but the Region 9 is the one that's focused on California. But California, Region 9 also includes Hawaii, Guam, like some other smaller localities and geographies and jurisdictions. So it's not only for California, but California is definitely the largest entity in Region 9.
Thank you for that, Matt. And I see your note, Felicia, that wasn't a hand up for some reason. It was an accidental click of the button. Okay, well, if you are interested in continuing this conversation with Matt, definitely encourage you to connect with him. Matt, if you want to drop your contact info in the chat, that way folks have a way of doing that. That would be awesome. I'm going to just wrap up with a couple of quick notes before we adjourn. So one of the things the team's trying to do to keep these meetings efficient and effective is moving items that are relevant to this ongoing work, but not necessarily high priority action items, moving those into the informational items section of your packet. And so make sure to review that portion of the agenda packet so that you can stay up to date on what some relevant developments are that aren't necessarily high priority action items for this group, but things you'll want to monitor. You'll see in there that there's information, for example, on recent visits that Governor Newsom has made to two of these California Jobs First regions in the last month, just to really signal his commitment and his how this program continues to be a high priority to him and his administration and the team at GoBiz and other agencies. And so take a look at that if you're interested in seeing what those visits were like and what they were showcasing. And then, the team here, Jesse, Maria, others have offered to stay online for a few extra minutes. For those of you who are interested in discussing a little bit further the state's new parameters around compensation of your time for these efforts moving forward. So if any of you would like to stay on and chat about that a little bit further, the team will be sticking around to take additional questions you may have or provide further clarity on that on those new regulations. So if you want to take us up on that, just stay on this call. You don't need to go anywhere else. And then for anyone else, feel free to sign off accordingly. But for all of you, just want to, on behalf of the team at OCBC, the team at California Forward, wish you happy holidays. They be festive, memorable, and above all, safe for each of you. So thanks for being here today. We'll be seeing you all soon in upcoming meetings. Appreciate your continued commitment to this very worthy cause. Thank you.